Indi Bridgman.
And Jeff Bridgman of Jeff R. Bridgman American Antiques in York County, Pennsylvania. What are we here for tonight, Indi?
Well, tonight we are telling you guys about the firehouse banners. And this one is specifically from Harrisburg, Pennsylvania.
Yeah, that's right. So, fire banners are extraordinarily rare things in the antiques world. Early ones, anything dating really pre-1920. There were so many banners like this, made for all sorts of political organizations, fraternal groups, social clubs, churches. All sorts of organizations had banners like this. You could order one however you wanted it, but you almost never see them for firehouses. And when you do, they never have imagery. And even in the rare instances where that occurs, what you'll see is maybe like, a ladder crossed with a fire axe. Very crude, simple, small, nothing big and graphic. But this is extraordinarily different. So across the top here it reads West Side Hose number 3 with crossed fire bugles. Amazing. Look at these torches. And we have a fire truck, the early form of it. This is a chemical carriage in the center, and Steelton, PA. Steelton is part of Harrisburg, and it's the southern part of Harrisburg where the steel mill is. I have 5 books just on fire material alone and fire collectibles. There are no banners in any of them. What a thing. Look at the scalloping, the gilding, the tassels, these brass rings along the top allowed it to be put on a rod and carried high up in the air in a parade. So these guys organized in 1896. That's when they started. And really, they got going in 1898. So they started actually as an outgrowth of a Republican club. And they got their first apparatus from one of the other hose companies. So, Indi, do you want to show us that?
Of course. So we don't really have the exact picture because these were really long time ago, but we have something that looks basically just like it. So this is a parade fire hose carriage, and when the fireman got alerted, you would think, okay, so they would ride in here and they would get on their way. No, they would not. You'd think that, but they really don't. They would push and pull this thing. Actually, this gap here is to put all their supplies, like their hose. So they are pushing this thing up hills, because when they had to be there, they had to be there.
Yeah.
But I think it's really interesting because all of the bells and the eagle, and you're probably like, well, what is that for? This is supposed to be like a fire truck. Well, really, when the firemen are going most of their time helping houses, making sure the house don't burn down, they're actually going to parades. And as you think, oh, there's a lot of parades with fire trucks these days, but there was a ton in the long time ago.
Yeah, there were.
And so that's why they would come here, and then they would go in these parades, and those people would be like, you got a really cool fire truck. I'd like to do that.
Yep, that's absolutely right. These guys, like militia units, they were always in competition with one another. Guys always competing with one another, just like women have things they compete about. Guys wanted firefighters, they wanted the best looking equipment, the best uniforms, the fanciest stuff. They wanted to look good for the girls in the parade. They wanted to compete with each other, to who had the better uniforms, who had the better stuff. Militia units were the same way, and these were social clubs too, really. All of these things were. The fraternal groups, the firehouses, and these guys were in parades constantly, and they all hired bands. Back then, there were a lot of little private bands. Sometimes every fire company would hire a band for whatever events they were having. So there may be a whole bunch of bands at one event, just hired by the different fire companies.
They would go to parades and have really fun times, and they would have
Yeah.
fancy carriages to ride around, so people could be like, "Oh my God, this is what they ride to houses to save people. This is epic."
Everything was fancy. This is a silver-mounted parade hose carriage, and that's exactly the sort of thing that West Side Hose had to start out with. Then they got something new.
So in 1902, they made it on the newspaper. They actually had a meeting about what styles the uniforms were going to be, what color they were going to be. You might be, well, it's just like a uniform. Why is it that so important? Well, little things now were big things back then. People were really happy for things back then. And you're probably like, well, what's so important about a uniform?
Yeah. I mean, it would make the paper. If you went on vacation and you were anybody important, it actually made the paper a lot of times. Maybe not by 1900 so much, but little things were big things, and especially for a fire company. So it's really cool to see record of them actually. Oh, they're getting together to decide about their uniforms, decide what colors they're going to be. So right about the same time, there started to be talk about buying a new apparatus. Steelton is all hills, and every time you went out on a fire call, you have to push that thing wherever you're going, ding, 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 up with all the bells. It'd be kind of an interesting thing to see, I would imagine. You'd hear it coming, but it would be a bear to have to drag that thing and all it had was a hose. So there was talk about getting a new chemical wagon. That's what they were called. In fact, fire companies started to be called chemical companies. Unusual, that name came and went for fire companies, but for a period of about 20 years, that's what we called them. So this would have a tank on the apparatus with a chemical inside. It could be sprayed on fire. So they ordered that from a company named Stewart and Stewart in Rochester, New York. And then they arranged for horses, and they had to have a place to store it. Their fire hall wasn't big enough, I guess. So they submitted bids. So in the paper are these things. July 7th of 1904, the Town Property Committee was empowered on Mr. Lewis's motion to purchase a suitable pair of horses for the West Side hose carriage, one of which would be paid for by the company. And there was a big to-do over that, also in the paper, because a guy went out, just bought the two horses on behalf of the company, and didn't have permission to do so. Anyways, high drama in Harrisburg. And then another article says, at a meeting of the Town Property Committee last evening, J.A. Myers was awarded the contract to erect the addition to West Side Hose House. The extension will be 2 stories in height, built of brick for $541. Cheap. You barely go to the grocery store for that anymore. His bid was the only one received. I think that was inside job. Well, it had to be done quickly. I mean, they got this in July 14th. It's in the paper. It hadn't even started yet. July 7th, they're arranging to buy the horses, and the carriage came right afterwards. And it would have been in preparation for that this banner was ordered. Now, couldn't find an article on this being ordered or received. Evidently, the receipt of the carriage just overshadowed it, or I just didn't find the article yet. I spent hours and hours finding articles of all kinds of 3 major newspapers, and it's more difficult than you think to pull everything that you need out of another fund. Great stuff. But it would have definitely been a news article to buy something this elaborate, for sure. Now, Indi, do you want to show us pictures? Because the carriage pictured here, we actually have photographs of it. This is the actual carriage that they ordered. This is the new chemical carriage.
Yep.
Just an amazing, that we actually have. We have it pictured here on a banner, and then we also have images from the newspaper of it.
So, we don't really know if these are the original horses, but we actually know the names of these two horses. This is Joe and this is George. And you can actually kind of see, like in the background, you can kind of see the picture of the carriage, which is really interesting, I think. And if you look really close, it looks like they're like hatched on and ready, like ready to go somewhere. Because they gotta be ready to go when they have to go to a fire.
Yep. Either that or parade, maybe, right? They might be just an important day for them.
Yeah. And then this other one I have here, it's not the same because these horses are kind of like brownish. But you can actually see if you look up close, there's a guy actually riding them, and he's probably going to a fire, probably helping someone, or he could have been going to a parade.
Yeah.
You don't know where these guys are going.
No. And you can really see it in that picture, right, Indy?
Yeah, you can really see the guy riding it. You can really see how the horses are attached on. I think you could probably see almost all of it. Some of the stuff is kind of just like...
Well, you can't see the chemical tank, but
yeah,
you can
can't
tell
really see this chemical
it's
tank.
absolutely the same carriage, which is just incredible.
Like it looks like you basically just put this carriage on here. You just can't really see the horses on this one.
Yeah, it'd be kind of fun to have horses on the banner. But
Yeah.
at least we have pictures of some of them. Evidently, they had to change teams, right?
Yeah.
And show them the picture of the fire hall.
So this is the fire hall. He's actually standing right in front of it, which I think is really cool because I love how he's just standing in front of it and you can see the whole carriage.
Yeah, and you can see the sign right where your finger is West Side Hose Company. So just awesome thing to have. Thanks, Indy.
Yeah.
So, what happened the next year, there's a couple of fun events that happened afterwards, but there's record of the carriage being received because it was always a big ceremony. You think it was a big deal to get a banner or uniforms. Oh my God, to get a new fire apparatus? It was huge. These were huge events with a big parade. And it was to happen on August 28th of 1904. And we have articles here in the paper that talk about it. It's just terrific. The new combination chemical and hose carriage was tested and accepted by West Side Hose Company on Saturday evening. There were musical selections by bands, there were speeches, much red fire and refreshments at the hose house. The West Side firemen were awesome hosts. That's not what it says, I put awesome in there. And the ceremonies began with a parade. And it goes on and on and on like that. And other hose companies participated. When they got a new carriage like this, one hose company would accept the apparatus and they'd give it to another hose company, and that hose company would wheel it into the firehouse. So these guys, this was a camaraderie, sort of really cool that they had these sort of ceremonies, almost fraternal in nature, to accept a new fire truck, which is such a big deal.
I think it's just crazy.
Isn't it wild?
They had so many of these trucks in the firehouse.
Yeah.
I just wonder how they would fit all of them.
Well, back then they only had one. They a couple of years after this, they sold the parade hose carriage back to Citizens Fire Company, the original Harrisburg Fire Company, that they had gotten it from, as so that they could use it in parades as a historical object. And this is all they had. So, but at least now they had horses, so they didn't have to push the thing. And they used this as their only fire apparatus until 1917, the opening year of U.S. involvement in World War I. So this isn't long ago, guys. I mean, this is 100 and
couple of years ago.
107 years ago. Basically, we didn't have fire trucks. Amazing. So they received it on the 28th, but guess what happened? All the preparation was made, they were ready to go, and right before, what happened?
they got a call and they said the people were on the phone and they said, "Oh my God, there's a fire! We need you here now!" So they all ran out and they had to, pack up all their stuff because they weren't prepared to have a fire right before the parade.
We don't know if we have to assume that they took the new chemical wagon right there and then, all ready to go, and all these ceremonies, and there was a fire at the steel mill. Of course there was a fire. There's always fires at the steel mill. so there they went down the hill at 15 minutes before it was supposed to start. There was a fire call. Last evening at 6:45 o'clock, an alarm of fire was sounded from the box 121, to which the entire fire department responded, including the new West Side Chemical with its new team of horses. So they definitely did go. The fire was at number 3 and 4 blast furnaces of the Pennsylvania Steel Company, the largest ventilator of the old engine house being in flames. The ventilator was constructed of wood and extended the entire length of the engine house. The fire was caused by number 4 blast furnace kicking, throwing fire and sparks against the ventilator. The damage will not exceed $3,000. Holy smokes, too much.
That's just crazy.
So then something else notable happened about a year later in which this carriage was involved. And Indi, can you tell us a little bit about that? In 1905.
Yeah, 1905, there was just a normal train, and then there was, I don't remember what the car was called.
A dynamite car.
A dynamite car. And so, they were just driving around like, oh, nothing's going to happen. And they went, boom! And it was full of dynamite. Like, this car was had a whole box of dynamite. So it boom, and it shattered all the windows, and even someone maybe even close to us, it the windows knocked down too. It was just a crazy explosion.
This was just out of control. An express train coming into Harrisburg collided with a dynamite car. The explosion was so tremendous that it blew out all the windows in South Harrisburg as far as a mile away from the site of impact.
I would say if some people were living close to there, their eardrums were probably...
Yeah, I shouldn't be laughing about this, but it was so ridiculous that glass was being blown out on Market Street in Camp Hill, I think.
That's close to us.
Yes, yeah. And absolutely amazing. This is across the river. So every fire company responded, and there were lots of casualties, and there were lots of people that had to go to the hospital. And there are reports in the paper of West Side hose coming with their chemical carriage and transporting on this carriage to the hospital the people that were in that incredible train collision in 1905, just a year after they got the new apparatus. So, once again, this is just the most elaborate of fire banners that you could ever imagine to have. And to be able to have the banner and with the apparatus on it for which it had to be made for that celebration on that day, and to have actual photographs of this to go with it and to know the history, oh my gosh, gilding and hand-painted banner is just an incredible thing, one of the best fire objects you could ever acquire. So thanks for coming and talking with Indi and I about it, and we will see you again soon.
We'll see you next time. Bye!